Hey guys, and welcome back for another video. So today we're going to be picking it right back up with the new players series. Last we left off, we just beat the opening boss, checked out our characters a little bit in the PvP lobby, and now we're ready to explore the whole of Tyria. Now Guild Wars 2 tends to do some of the things that traditional MMOs have done kind of the same way for a while, a little bit differently, so I feel like this will hopefully be helpful for those of you out there just starting. So if you're out in the world and you're just trying to figure out where to go or what to do, well, the first thing you should probably familiarize yourself with are the scouts. These NPCs show up as a telescope on the map, and when you talk to the NPC, they will show you a bit of the area closest to where you're at. Now, this doesn't mean that they're going to show you everything on the map, but it'll give you an idea of where to go next. Personally, I often ignore these guys altogether because I'd much rather just explore the open world with no guidance whatsoever. But if you want some idea of where to go, these guys will get you started. The first two actual map objectives that I'd like to talk about are waypoints and points of interest. These are sort of in their own group here because all you have to do is be near them in order to actually unlock these for the map. Points of interest show up on the map as small squares, and when you get close enough to one of them, they'll actually change to a small orange square with a white border. Now, while they are called points of interest, some are definitely going to be more interesting than others, but as a whole, I recommend going after these because some of them will take you off the beaten path quite a ways, and you'll discover cool parts of the map that you wouldn't otherwise. Very similar to points of interest, we have waypoints as well, these behaving pretty much the same way. Get close enough to one and it is now unlocked on the map, but waypoints, as you might guess from their name, are actually teleportation locations. Waypoints show up on the map as a grayish diamond with a smaller blue diamond inside, and once you've unlocked one of these, you can now fast travel to that location for a little bit of your in-game currency. The amount of currency you'll have to spend is going to depend on both your current level as well as the distance you're trying to travel. In the very beginning of the game, it's only going to cost you a few copper to use these waypoints, but as you level up, and depending on how far you'd like to travel, the price goes up and up. Now, I should say that this doesn't cost more than a few silver even at the end of the game, but just something to keep in mind. If you're trying to use a waypoint in a racial city or a big one like Lion's Arch, the waypoints there are actually free as long as you stay inside the confines of the city. As you travel around your first map, you might also notice a symbol that shows two red triangles. These are referred to as Vistas, and once you get close enough to one, you can use your interact key to start a cutscene that will show you around the map you're currently in. More often than not, you're going to find Vistas high up, but every now and again you'll find one that's not too hard to get to. That being said, there are also Vistas that will take you way out of the way before you actually figure out how to get to these things. Another marker to keep an eye out for are the hero points, which will show as an arrow pointing up. Now, like most things, some of these are going to be harder than others. For instance, a few of these are very easy in that all you have to do is go up to them, press your interact key, and wait a short time. These will say something like, "Commune in this place of power." But like I said, not all hero points behave this way. A lot of the time, you're going to approach one of these hero points and notice that there's an NPC with that symbol above their head. Interacting with this NPC usually results in you having to
fight them to the death.
Once you've completed a hero point, you'll actually be awarded with a hero point. Now, I don't want to talk about this in any kind of depth because we're really just focusing on leveling up and exploring the map in this video, but basically, you're going to want to get these whenever you see them, regardless of whether or not you want to 100% these maps, because those points, as you level up, will eventually be used to buy yourself some new abilities. So up until this point, I haven't really talked about questing, and we're playing an MMO, so what's the deal with that, Tate? Well, Guild Wars 2 really doesn't do that kind of questing. Rather, instead, they've used a heart system as well as an event system to fill the place of the typical questing system you've seen not only in other MMOs, but in other RPGs. Now, if you've played the game at all on your own before watching this video, you've probably seen and maybe even completed a heart. The way that heart quests work is you basically just find a heart on the map, shown as a heart, and as you approach it, you may notice that your UI changes a little bit. It's going to give you a list of things that can be done to complete the heart, and doing basically anything on that list is going to give you a little bit of progress. The tasks that you'll be asked to do are going to vary, and these will be pseudo-typical quest type activities, but rather than one monotonous task, at least you have a few options. Now, I'll be honest in saying that a lot of those activities boil down to you going up to something and pressing your interact key, but personally I'd still take this system over the typical boring kill so many enemies system seen in so many other games. Now, that doesn't mean that one of the objectives on your heart list won't say something like defeat these types of enemies, but there's no numerical value tied to it, and you can also complete that heart by doing a bunch of other stuff as well. Because hearts are all over the world and you can sort of just participate in them at random, there's no true quest giver, and so when you finish a heart, your rewards are actually just teleported to wherever you are. Once you've completed a heart, you can go to where the heart was on the map, and you'll notice this is actually another NPC. As long as the heart has been 100% completed, this NPC will now sell you a couple of things as a vendor, or you can just sell all the trash in your inventory. As a matter of fact, a few of these heart vendors actually sell skins you can only get this way. In addition to hearts, I also mentioned that events have a role to play in the replacing of the typical quest system, and are personally one of my favorite ways to explore some of the maps in this game. Similar to a heart, whenever you're near an event, it should add something to your UI, usually showing up in orange, and if you're close enough, you can open your map and actually see some markings, again in orange, on your map to indicate where this is happening. An event can be any number of objectives, but a lot of the time it's going to be killing waves of enemies to defend a town, escorting an NPC through all sorts of enemies as they make their way to a new location, and sometimes events can even mean a little bit of a boss fight in the open world. Events also have the possibility to start new events that further tell a story or simply lead you to new areas of the map. For instance, in my playthrough for this video, I used a Norn to play through the very beginning of the game and came across an event that was taking place in a nearby cave. My objective for the first event was to get back some stolen food. Once I got all the food back and the event completed, another event started right up, and that was to defend that food as the enemies were trying to take it back again. After you successfully defend enough of the food to complete the event, the enemies eventually started to summon a boss for me to fight, starting yet another event. Now, once the boss was finally taken out, the events were all over, but this is just an example of how events can chain to tell a small story, or at the very least to let you know, hey, maybe I should hang out at the end of an event and see if anything else happens. Another thing to keep in mind is that while I was doing all of these events, you may have noticed I was also getting progress on the nearby heart. Anytime that you have an incomplete heart and you notice an event taking place nearby, I highly recommend that you make some time to complete that event, because you'll also be completing the heart much faster than you would be if you were just doing the heart. Now, I know everything I've talked about so far deals with exploration, and I know exploration isn't for everyone, but keep in mind that every single thing that I just mentioned is the bulk of how you're going to gain experience while leveling in this game. I know there are quite a few players who like to get their experience in RPGs in general just from killing mobs, and you will be killing some mobs while you're doing at least hearts and events. But for the most part, killing enemies doesn't really pay off as much as a lot of this other stuff. This by no means is me telling you not to attack enemies and fight them for experience. You're obviously still going to gain some experience from those enemies. And I actually have a bit of a tip for you guys who prefer to kill enemies over most other things. If you're running around and you're looking for enemies to fight, try to kill enemies that haven't been attacked in a really long time. You obviously have no idea how long it's been since any of these enemies have been killed, unless you saw it happen right before you got there, but here's just a few things to keep in mind. There are neutral creatures, usually like moas and boars, things like that. A lot of times, because they're not hostile, players will outright ignore these creatures altogether. I highly recommend targeting enemies just like this because enemies that haven't been fought in a while actually build up bonus XP. You'll know when you've been successful when you look at the XP that flashes on screen when defeating an enemy, and you notice a second XP value below the original. I'd still recommend shifting your focus towards some of the things I talked about earlier, but you can still end up with a decent little XP bonus for attacking enemies that have been alive in the world for a minute. Another thing that you should really consider when trying to decide what you want to do in Guild Wars 2 is map completion as a whole. Every map in Guild Wars 2 is made up of tiny objectives, and once you get all of those objectives completed, you'll be awarded with a chest whose reward is equal to the level of the map you're on. That means at the beginning of the game, you're probably going to get a level 10 chest. The rewards inside are obviously going to be the most valuable when you're the level of the map that you're on. I only mention this because I know a lot of people probably won't 100% every single map, and if you don't, that's fine, but when you come back, do not be surprised if that bonus chest at the end isn't as exciting as it maybe could have been. As I said earlier, you will need to complete a few things on each map in order to get that chest at the end, as well as the 100% completion. And as you might have already guessed, those objectives are tracking down all the points of interest, waypoints, vistas, hero points, and hearts in every single map. You can also check your map progress or even world progress by opening up the map and looking in the top left. If you should happen to want to explore every single map 100%, you'll be awarded with a chest that has a few items needed to craft some sought-after legendary weapons, as well as the Been There, Done That title you can proudly display on any character on your account. The last thing I'd like to talk about in this video is how to access all of these other racial cities. Not only are racial cities themselves a part of map completion, but you may have a friend who's playing a different race and you want to play with them, or very simply, you're either complete or bored of the area that you've been in. If you'd like a change of scenery or you need more experience, you're going to need to head to Lion's Arch, which has a series of portals that will allow you to access each of the other racial cities. Lion's Arch itself is actually a higher level zone, and you probably don't have access to it if you're just starting out. So how do we go about getting there on a fresh new character? Well, you basically have two options. You can either head over to your racial city and look on the map for a purple portal that when you hover your mouse above that should say portal to Lion's Arch. Or if you don't mind going back through the PvP lobby, you can actually open your map there and notice that there's another easy portal to Lion's Arch just from where you spawn in. Now, your main story quest will eventually take you to your racial capital city, but if you haven't explored that yet, it's basically the giant town-looking place right next to where you very first started playing the game. Once you're actually in Lion's Arch, you should see an intro cutscene, and once that cutscene completes, you just need to head over to the east until you see a circle of portals next to an area called Coriolis Plaza. In order to pick the locale you're heading to, look for a portal that has a certain race outside of it, and that should be a pretty good indication of where you're heading. Now, you should be able to go through one of those portals and join the race of your friend, or simply just open up more of the game so that you can explore and level up. Although it's not exactly pertinent to this guide, I should also say that Lion's Arch is basically the central hub of the whole game, and you'll basically now have access to every single thing you should ever need. Now, most of those things will also be found in your racial starting city, but there are a few portals to later game content and a few conveniences in just the layout of Lion's Arch itself. Any way you cut it, I think Lion's Arch is one of the first things that you should have access to. Keep in mind, now that you have some waypoints in Lion's Arch and some of these other racial cities, you can freely travel there for a small fee. And that, guys, is basically all I wanted to cover here today. Just a little bit of how to level up and start your exploration through the land of Tyria. If I had any suggestions for you guys, if you're really not trying to do 100% map completion, I'd probably recommend focusing on waypoints, as those are fast travel points, and hero points, as you probably won't need them right away, but you will need them later on. And if you're just going for the flat, juicy experience, I would really focus events and hearts, as they're going to give you the most. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. I hope that you guys just starting out found this helpful. I know Guild Wars 2 is a little strange at first, but at least when I got used to it way back in 2012, I really enjoyed it, especially when compared to a lot of other MMOs out there. No other game like it has given me that amount of freedom. You basically just get to do whatever you feel like doing, and it counts towards leveling up your character. Anyway, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.